Hello and welcome to Scott Bryson Beyond the Service. I am super excited to introduce you guys to a good friend of mine, Mr. Michael Williamson. He's the CEO of United Way in New Orleans. If I have that title wrong, I'm sure he'll correct me. Michael, welcome to the show.
Hey, Scotty, how you doing, my friend?
It's good to see you, buddy. We don't get to see each other nearly enough. I think the last time we saw each other was in November at a wedding.
Yeah, there's too much time passes between times we get to see each other, and just for your viewers out there, it's United Way of Southeast Louisiana, but we're headquartered in New Orleans, so you ain't wrong.
I knew I'd get it. I got close, but no cigar, so I knew you'd straighten me out. But
You're all good.
thank you. I know you're a busy man, and thank you for making the time to talk to us tonight. Kind of what we do, and you know this. I don't read your bio. I just kind of let my guests do a 2 or 3 minute, 5 minute little intro about themselves. Could you just tell the people like where you're from, who you are, and then kind of like, and then we'll segue into how we met living when we lived in Virginia, and then we'll go from there.
Hey, man, I appreciate all seriousness, and I appreciate the opportunity, Scott, to share a little bit more about our work as United Way and less about me. And before we jump in, I just should take a moment to thank you for your service. 25 years in the Secret Service and more in total law enforcement. Like you're a role model for a lot of guys like us out there that just really appreciate folks like you that pick up the mantle and serve. However, local community or at the federal level. So well, thank you, brother, for that.
Oh, well, thank you. That's kind.
It's 100% earned, and I know all your viewers know that. So like I'm a South Carolina guy, born and raised in South Carolina. I've tried to hold on to my accent as I moved around a little bit, but born and raised in Aiken, South Carolina. Went to the University of South Carolina, go Gamecocks. Sorry, Scott.
It's all good.
But kind of started my career in banking. I won't go through the whole resume
Yeah.
because it will bore you people to death. But I started my career in banking and got a chance to go volunteer with United Way as a loan executive in my hometown, which was very meaningful because it's my hometown, right? And so I did that, and I found a passion for helping the organization raise money so it could better serve those in need in our community. And so, long story short, ended up being offered a job there, like shortly after I left, and that kind of laid the groundwork for me to go work, nationally and globally at United Way Worldwide for a few years. And the turning point in my career, what brought me to New Orleans, was Hurricane Katrina. And how you have job descriptions, Scott, where that last line is other duties as called upon. Well, one thing that wasn't made abundantly clear was that I was responsible for marshaling our response in the wake of a disaster. We had never seen anything like Katrina. And so I was automatically put on the forefront to help lead the United Way Worldwide charge to raise money for the Gulf Coast in response to Katrina. So I did that, which allowed me to establish a connection with tons of leaders across the Gulf Coast. But my predecessor at our United Way, Gary Ostrowski, we worked a lot together for a few years, and he invited me to come down and join the team. And Kim, my wife, and she wasn't going any farther north. And so, it's flip-flop weather down here. And so I said, all right, let's talk about this. And that was over 15 and a half years ago.
Yeah. Well, that's crazy. And just for the viewers that don't know the backstory between Michael and myself, we met living in Virginia. Tell me if I have this, I don't know if this is a great analogy or not, but like the Secret Service has field offices everywhere, right? So United Way has offices everywhere. And then we have headquarters in D.C. like any other bureaucratic, agency, FBI, DEA, whatever. Well, you explained to me back then, because I was like, what are you doing up here? And then you kind of explained to me that you were, for lack of better terms, you were checking the headquarters box, which I think you just called it United Way. I'm sorry, what did you call it? United Way Global?
Worldwide.
Worldwide. Like worldwide prestige. But anyway, that's, you were up there checking that box, so to speak, and then you were able to use that as a launching pad to go down, and you've just done so well for yourself. And what I'd like to say real quick before I ask a question is I want the people to know that Michael Williamson is, yes, he's the CEO of a major corporation. he's a good man and a good friend of mine, and we've done a lot of good things together in the past. We've coached ball together, we raised our kids together, and you're one of my dear friends. And I know, just like you sort of gave me my accolades a minute ago, I feel the same way about you. I'm just really proud of you, even if you're not who you are professionally. You're just a good dude, and I'm glad to call you friend, and I just appreciate everything you do to help people.
Scott, it's people like you. We all want to be better and do better. Every chance we get on this planet. And so, that means a lot coming from you. And and I'm, I love what I'm doing. Like we could talk about it, some, during this podcast, but I've certainly tried to be an atypical CEO of any sorts, let alone a United Way CEO. But I got the chance at United Way Worldwide 5 years to kind of get a sense of the depth and breadth of the United Way network and just all the good people across the network, CEOs all the way down to entry-level staff that are just, they're fighting the good fight, and they really are trying to help their communities. And I'm blessed to be able to come to Southeast Louisiana and New Orleans and surrounding parishes and continue that work. But I like to roll up my sleeves too. Yeah. And so there'll be disasters like I'm driving the box truck, I'm moving the pallet jack. I don't get to drive the forklift. Our public information officer, Kirby Jane Nagel, will not let me drive a forklift. But I like to be hands-on for as long as I can until I get to be an old man.
No, and I know that about you, and I'm glad that you are able to kind of get out on this podcast and talk a little bit. I know you're also a very modest guy, humble, so you're not gonna toot your own horn very much. I'm gonna have to pull it out of you. But before we get into what I really want to talk about, which are two things really, there's a laundry list of things we could get into, but for the sake of time, I want to focus on the January 1st tragedy that you guys ended up using as a good thing, right? I think sometimes the enemy, the evil one, allows things to happen for bad, and then God uses it for good. So we'll talk about that in a minute, and then of course the Super Bowl coming up, which will be a busy week for you guys next week. But do you, and if you don't feel comfortable talking about it, it's totally fine, but you just share, if you feel like it, the story that I know about with you and our good friend Jerry, who, and I just thought about this off the cuff when you talked about the box truck, and you guys drove a box truck to, I guess it was somewhere down in Florida. Do you feel comfortable talking about that?
I love talking about that, Scott, or those kind of, examples of the work, because they are certainly not about me. I get to play a role. I might be a cog in a wheel, but the wheel's the more important thing because you don't roll at it. So yeah, I mean, that's actually, our friends in Florida were struck, by a hurricane terribly. And this is kind of an interesting story how things work, but our friends at the New Orleans Saints were hosting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Tampa Bay was hit pretty hard by the hurricane. And the Saints reached out to us. We're a partner, and we do lots of stuff together, and we're an official partner of the New Orleans Pelicans. But they reached out and said, listen, last minute, this is a Friday, but we want to do a supply drive for the residents of Tampa Bay, among all of our fans. So our team sprung into action and set up collection bins at all the entrances, 11 entrances of the Superdome here in New Orleans. And so they collected a bunch of stuff on a Sunday. Well, I struggled with the fact that it could be weeks before those supplies got there. And I was like, it just didn't feel right. And we had a big event coming up the next weekend that I had to be in town for on Saturday to honor a major volunteer. I was like, you know what? We got a box truck. It was loaded up with stuff. I'm going to drive it to Tampa. Great idea, right? But great ideas mean you have to have great friends. And so I reached out to our buddy Jerry and said, Jerry, I'm rolling to Tampa. I'm leaving at 0:30 on Thursday morning. I'm driving all the way through. You want to go with me? Now, mind you, Jerry has a very large recreational vehicle.
Yes, he does.
He said, I'm down with it. I'll meet you on the interstate. And we rolled for 13 hours. Took longer. Traffic was terrible, those kind of things. to get to Tampa, and we drove in, offloaded, the items. We met with the United Way folks there, and and they were so happy. And it's about giving hope. I mean, it's a little bit of stuff, but it gives hope to the residents there that know that other communities care about them. And Jerry, when I went and slept in the RV, we got up the next day, and I drove the box truck back, and he went back, dropped off in Florida, and it was a long trip, but just felt so important to make sure that that we got the stuff there. And like an example, I like to be hands-on. I could have sat back and said, let's ship it there and pay for somebody to deliver it, and then I thought about the cost of delivering items, shipping, getting a truck to do that. And I was like, I got time. I'll roll in there. I can talk on the phone while I'm going and do some work that way, and we did it. And so that was the hurricane, but I'm sure you want to talk about New Year's Day too, and I'm happy to do that as well.
No, I do, and I just want to add to that. Again, I've seen behind the curtain because we've been friends for a long time, and people that are just watching this, all my guests are just random people to them, so they don't really know, they're not in the weeds on people's lives. And I think that a lot of times when people are really doing good stuff, they don't go around talking about it. You kind of, you just do it, and God knows about it, and what's in your heart, and so that's all that really matters. But you kind of remind me of a guy that you don't know that I knew when I lived in London, and his name is Reed, and Reed was a banker, very successful businessman, of an American guy, an expat living in London. And we went to church together, and he would tell our pastor, he goes, I don't just want to be a check writer. I want to be the boots on the ground type of guy, because he could have written checks I couldn't write, And I know you do a lot of that as the CEO. You're doing that, but you also are willing to put on a pair of jeans and a T-shirt and be the hands and feet of God, right? And you're not going to talk about. I'm basically making you talk about that tonight, but like the average, and this is me, I shouldn't say this probably because I don't really know what's in other people's hearts, but I don't think the average CEO or big time businessman is out there doing things on Saturdays for other people. And so that's a hat tip to you, my friend. I'm really proud to know that you did that. And I just wanted to share that with the people.
Yeah, you're like, we're all called to serve, and we serve however we can. I'm fortunate to still be, healthy, relatively healthy. And, we were raised to work hard and to take care of the people around us. And so it seems like, just like the natural thing to do, but I'm running the organization, so I have the business of the organization to run, and we try to run it smartly that way, and efficient and effective and all those types of things. But at the same time, it's important for me to do that extra because it keeps me grounded in the why. We often talk to people about what's your why? Why do you volunteer? Why do you give back? Why do you advocate for things that you care about? And for me, it kind of keeps me grounded in my why. And I hope to do that, for as long as I can. I've talked about working until I'm 70 because, I want to have purpose. I want to to have grandkids someday too, but that's purpose. But and it's rewarding. And I know so many of your viewers out there volunteer. They volunteer for their church or little league. They coach. They may have their favorite nonprofit they work with, or they help out a friend from time to time. That's volunteering and giving back. And it all matters. Yeah. Doing what you can and when you can is, I think, we're all called to do it. And listen, we live in a country where that is who we are. It's our American values, and I'm proud to say it. And certainly, called by God to do the work that I do, and I don't talk about that a lot, but it's important. So, but I like talking about the work and the amazing people I get to work with to do it, because I'm just one person. People see me as a CEO and they think that's the guy in charge, he's the bigwig and all that kind of stuff. I could tell you in our organization, people know me as Michael. They know I'm accessible. They talk to me like I'm any other person, if they have questions or, things they want to share. And so that's I'm very proud of that. And I'm very proud of the work that we're doing.
That's good. You should be. So, okay, let's kind of talked about some of the lighter stuff, if you will. Let's get into some of the more heavy things, which we won't go, we're not going to go negative town here, but we're going to have to sort of set it up right so we can talk about the good. Let's talk about January 1st, and everybody knows what happened January 1st in 2 different cities. Let's talk about your city. Was it Bourbon Street? I think it was. And
What?
so we don't really need to, beat a dead horse, so to speak. People know what happened, but let's just pick up from where we kind of left off. You had reached out to me and asked me to maybe help promote some stuff, which try to help generate some funds for these families and things. Do you just want to start from there and talk about what you guys did as far as helping the victims of that tragedy?
Sure, absolutely. Like, listen, it's why we do what we do. I will tell you, Scott, and I wrote a blog about this too, one of my usual blog posts, and I try to think for a second. I really try to think about where I was at in the moment, so I can capture that and share it with people that want to know where was Michael's head at when all this is happening. But that was about 3:15 a.m. on New Year's Day. My wife and I barely saw the New Year ring in. I had to wake up to say Happy New Year because we go to bed so early. But I wake up early. So I woke up at 4:30 that morning to look at my phone to see what would happen. And I literally just couldn't believe it. A terrorist drove a Ford F-150 truck down Bourbon Street. I know Bourbon Street. It is happening, at late hours of the night. And when it started to unfold, I was in conversations with my team across the morning. This is New Year's Day, and we should have been enjoying the new year and, mimosas or Bloody Marys or whatever. But we weren't. We were talking about what do we do to respond. We're used to natural disasters. We've done hurricanes and other things. And we paused, and I paused. I kind of pumped the brakes because I was thinking, this is a mass casualty event. 14 people are dead. 40 plus more were injured, hospitalized. How do we respond to this? And started getting calls and emails, people wanting to know how they could help. And so we knew they needed a trusted source. And there were a few others in the community that do that. There were trusted organizations. And we stood up our New Year's Day, our United for New Orleans Relief Fund, and started trying to actively raise money. And I appreciate your help with that. But more importantly, and this is an interesting story, Scott, let me tell it, but at the same time, as I'm reading all the news stories, a former colleague of mine reached out and said, Michael, I'm not sure if you saw this news story. Well, the news story was if people saw the footage of Bourbon Street, you saw a wheelchair, a large motorized wheelchair in shambles on Bourbon Street. Well, this colleague said, I'm personal friends with that family. They're in a really tough spot. Is there anything you could do to help connect them with resources? I said, absolutely. Give me the cell phone number. He gave me the cell phone number of the daughter. It's been all over national news. It's Jeremy Sinsky and his wife, his daughter, Heavenly, and immediately contacted her and said, what do you need? And she said, well, if we're going to get out of this hospital at some point, Dad's going to need a new wheelchair. Talked to a buddy of mine, Mark Raymond Jr. at Split Second Foundation, who's a quadriplegic, basically same injury, because Mr. Sinsky had been injured something since 1999. They basically use the same wheelchair. Oh. He said, I can help. At the same time, the Cajun Navy was trying to help out the Sinskys. So we all converged on this family. And then I want to say it was a couple of days, Scott. I think it was about Thursday. A manufacturer donated that wheelchair, which is about a $60,000 wheelchair to the Sinsky family. And the most heartwarming part, and I'll stop because we stayed in contact. We bought him, he likes rotisserie chicken. He couldn't get that in the hospital. We bought him rotisserie chicken, and the wife likes mashed potatoes. We took that over there. But before they left, his daughter, Heavenly, said, do you know where we can get a good king cake around here? I said, girl, I got you. So I went over there, met them in the hospital, and they were discharging and brought on two king cakes. You got to try two. You got to figure out which one you like. And so but those stories repeat themselves. Like these are families that we are connected for life. Like this will transcend time. Like it's, but that just, what I love so much about the work we do, and there are countless others. We've worked with all 14 victims' families, the injured, hospitalized. Members of my staff have been talking to those families. There's a connection. Cell phones exchanged. Call me if you need anything. We provided significant financial support to those families just a week after the New Orleans Day tragedy. In some cases, the funding that we provided, thankfully, because we have amazing donors supporting our fundraising efforts. Shout out to Ms. Gail Benson of the New Orleans Saints and the NFL Foundation. They contributed a significant amount of funding. But a week later, I might have mentioned, we were working with families to get them the financial support they needed to meet those burial expenses or travel expenses, or if they're in a hospital, families were traveling in to be with their loved ones. And this is the new year. Like people had spent out for Christmas, and it was like money wasn't plentiful. These are average American families for the most part. And like now I've got all these expenses, and we knew that they shouldn't have to endure that alone. And quite frankly, our donors were like very clear, like I want to help the families. And so our commitment from the beginning, and I know you shared this when you helped promote our fund, is like 100% of the funds raised is going out to help the victims and their families and organizations that are supporting them. No administrative overhead, none of those costs come out, no transactional costs, that kind of stuff. We're passing on all those resources to the families to ensure that they get the aid they need. We're providing $15,000 per family for those that have a deceased loved one. That was 14 families. And then for those that were injured and hospitalized, we were giving $3,500 just to help with those immediate expenses. That's nice. And then right now we're trying to work in support of the hospitality workers because we fully understand that, their Bourbon Street, their incomes have been severely reduced because traffic's been down, tips are down, wages, hours, et cetera. So, that was only possible. Certainly we had to do the response, but the donors that stepped up and allowed us to do that for them on their behalf, have been amazing. But there's just countless stories of real people and families that we've connected with. And I mean this with all sincerity, like, when you do this kind of work, that's what you love. Like it's the people and knowing that I helped a family. Yeah. Like, and so many stories to tell about that, but I'm glad to share it with you and your listeners. And quite honestly, my guess is United Way in their community, they have a similar DNA and makeup. Now we're not all alike, but I'm sure they're the same way. Boots on the ground. We like to say boots on the ground and move at the speed of need. That's our approach. Yeah.
Well, I like that. I say boots on the ground all the time, but what'd you say, speed of need?
Yeah, boots on the ground and move at the speed of need. I even go so much farther to say we're like the blue collar response to crisis.
That's awesome.
Like, roll your sleeves up and listen. I'm the old guy on the team, but my staff at all levels, like they're rolling up their sleeves and they're digging in, and they are workhorses. And I'm honored to know them. I'm honored to work with them. And if you had a chance to meet them, you'd think the same thing.
Yeah, well, I'm sure I would, and I've got to get my butt down there. I keep talking about it, and I never do it.
Come on, brother.
I'm so tired of airplanes. I don't want to get off on a tangent. I had to fly for 25 years, and I'm just so sick of airplanes. But I will make it happen. I promise. But anyway, I just remember talking to you on, I think it was it January the 1st or the 2nd? It was whenever. It was right around, because I was at my mom and dad's house, and you and I were chatting. And it's many hands make light work, right? And you brought a perspective that I hadn't thought about, because like doing this podcast and these videos, I find myself in uncharted territory, and it still feels a little weird, and I don't feel like I'm making a difference. Like I've always been a boots on the ground kind of guy. Like my brother-in-law likes to say, they hire me from the neck down. I'm the worker, you know what I mean? Like I'm the physical labor, but that's what I love. I like getting out there and getting after it. So now I'm just doing more talking, and it feels weird because I don't feel like I'm really doing that much. But it's a platform God's given me for right now. That's what I'm doing. This is the chapter of the life I'm in. And I remember talking to you about that and just your perspective. I was like, oh, I didn't think about that. Like, and then you talk about the wheels. You know, if I was writing a movie, Michael, I wouldn't think to put in, okay, dude in a wheelchair who's been injured for 25 years gets run over by a car. Like, you can't make this stuff up.
Well, Scott too, and Heavenly, her name's Heaven, Lee, which I love. So you say it Heavenly. She fully believes that wheelchair saved Jeremy's life. Like, it's a big sturdy thing. He got hit, he got knocked out, he was unconscious. He woke up, you know, his legs were severely damaged, even though he was a quadriplegic and couldn't use them anymore. But like, she really believes that that wheelchair, you know, saved his life. And I'm happy to say too that we stay in contact still. They're in Florida right now, and he's recovering. He's had some setbacks here and there, but yeah, you couldn't write a movie about it, but it was so surreal. And Scott, there's something else I need to say too, because other communities that have had perhaps a mass casualty type of event, you know, you think Vegas or those kind of places, what often doesn't get told is the story of the trauma for all the people, like the people that barely, you know, got missed. Like, you would think grateful to live, grateful not be run over with a truck. Survivor's guilt is a real thing. Like, people, like, you know, they saw a loved one get killed and they got to stand there and watch it because they survived. Just the trauma, the restaurant workers and the bar workers, the people at the door. If you go down Bourbon Street, you know what I'm talking about. They're at the door handing out pamphlets and that kind of stuff. They witnessed it. And to go back to work the next day or even think about working, like, you know, not to get off on mental health, but we know, like, this is going to be something that's going to last for a lot of these individuals. And our promise has been to work to be able to help make sure they get access to the services they need. That's a real thing. And they didn't go to the hospital. They survived it. They're grateful for that. But the trauma they experienced is significant. And once again, we got so many great partners. You know, we talk about United Way here, but so many other organizations in the community all banding together to try to offer support to these families. And it's been heart-wrenching and heartwarming at the same time.
Yeah, no, it's for sure. You know, you just brought up another good point. Like, you think about survivor's remorse with, like, the military folks talk about it all the time. I'm a big Sean Ryan guy. I love watching his podcast, and he's evolved over time, and he's talking to all kinds of people now, which I think is good. But, like, when he's talking to these war fighters and things, they come home with some real PTSD, and so you think in terms of, like, survivor's remorse or survivor's guilt, whatever, in that, or like the police world, or what, you know, getting in a shooting and your buddy survives or whatever. But you don't think about it in terms of like just regular layperson minding his or her own business. But I mean, that's a very valid point. And you know, we're not on here to get deep in the weeds on mental health and things like that. But that's a very valid point. I'm glad you brought that up, because these, you know, I would, and again, I'm not trying to tell you how to do your job, but I would encourage you guys to stay on top of that with whomever can help, because that's got the potential to be an ongoing problem.
Yeah, the work is underway. We're having meetings now. Unfortunately, we have to do the meetings, although we like to move at the speed of need, and less meetings is better if we can get to action, which is kind of in our DNA. But we are thinking about, like, how do we make sure we keep our eyes and ears open, and make sure we're working with the mental health providers, nonprofits, and others that are in the community that are seeing individuals that hopefully are going to talk to, you know, a professional if they feel a sort of way, you know, if they're in their feelings, so just like people are here might say, and just hopefully they're talking to somebody about it and saying, listen, I don't know how to process like what I saw and the fact that I lived, and like, you know, I'm trying to think about it, but I got to work, I got to make money for my family, you know, and that's true. And so to your point, we're going to stay on top of it, but, you know, we are blessed, you know, to have a number of partners that are just and they're experts in their field. So I yield to them. Like, you just tell us what you need, we're going to get it for you.
Yeah, that's really good. It's a team effort, right? One of the things I like is my kids get tired of me saying one team, one fight, but that was kind of a mantra that we developed later in my career with some guys I worked with at the Secret Service, because we were up in New York and it was kind of feast or famine. And my boss was a friend of mine, and he's like, one team, one fight. And it's just kind of the mantra that we have been rolling with since then. Before we switch over and talk about the Super Bowl, which I definitely am excited, that'll be a little bit lighter and that'll be a good way to end this thing. Real briefly, like, we'll do a cliff note thing here. And if you don't want to do it, we won't do it. But like, I just want to kind of hear from a layman's like a person out in the community, but that was basically not directly, but very indirectly, very almost directly related to this tragedy that we just talked about in New Orleans, with especially the fact that you live down there and you're the CEO of an outfit that helps people. So you are like intrinsically involved immediately. What was your kind of thought process when you then learned hours later that something else jumped off over in Las Vegas? Like, I would just this is just Scott Bryson asking, because I want to kind of get inside of somebody else's head that's in that world, like, because I know what my brain was doing. Do you feel like getting into that for just a minute and just very high level, not getting in the weeds? Just, you want to talk about that for a minute? Or?
No, like we're like everybody else. Like, things start happening, and like, what's connected and what's not connected. We're trying to, absorb the news around us and see, trying to see, oh, is this connected? Is this like something bigger? And of course, I yield to folks like you, the professionals, and folks that are in service now, like, and I know how to stay in my lane, but we're all guessing and wondering, like, are these things all connected? Here in Southeast Louisiana, New Orleans, it was called a terrorist attack, and there were questions even, were there other people involved? And of course, the law enforcement was deployed and moving very, very fast to identify potential suspects, which is great. Like, it was great to see NOPD and the FBI and other law enforcement agencies all working together to respond. But yeah, we're like, I'm a true lay person. It's like, I don't know, like, how you connect all the dots. But Scott, I will say something, because this is an experience that we had as a part of this process that is worth noting. And I know you talk about it on your podcast, like the worker bees, the boots on the ground. I will tell you that the FBI Victim Services personnel, I think 50 of them, converged on New Orleans. Those are some of the best people we've ever met. We worked hand in hand with them. They were all assigned to cases. They were all given, if a person was hospitalized or a person was deceased, the families. And we worked hand in hand with them as they went through their vetting process. And I have to just say, like, it's not political. This is about the people that were on the ground. I just have to share. I think, you talk about speaking truth to power, and you believe in being extremely honest and giving credit where credit is due. Hats off to those people. Yeah. They were fantastic. And, they certainly made our job easier because of the case management they were doing and meeting with families. And we try to think about that in terms of the families. We don't want families have to talk to 5 different people. Okay, FBI's got a caseworker on you. We'll work through them, make sure they get your information and all the stuff that we need to get you the financial assistance. And it made things happen so quickly. Yeah. So just I thought
I'm glad you said that, because I had heard through the grapevine that you'd open your offices up to them, which I think is obviously just very admirable. And one of our neighbors, I won't use his name because he's still working in the government, but you know who I'm talking about. One of our neighbors in Virginia was an FBI guy, and he was great. I mean, he's a great guy. It's always the head shed, right? It's I don't know what happens to some of these government agencies, and they're not all bad, because I have friends that are still on the job, and they're good. They're really good people, right, and good leaders. And there's a difference. I talk about this all the time too. There's a difference between leadership and management. And the managers are the ones that sort of get in the way, but the leader knows how to delegate and do different and lead, right? But it's always the upper echelon that's the problem when we're throwing shade on the bureau or the service. And I call balls and strikes on my guys too. And I spent 25 years there, and I'm like, gosh, I hope I didn't waste my whole flipping adult life. But I know I didn't, because I worked with some really good people. And to your point, it's the men and women on the ground that are getting it done. And I'm glad you had a good experience. That's good.
It was fantastic. So I had to, you know me, like I'm not the political guy, but I can tell you my experience with the people that I worked with was fantastic,
Yeah.
and I think they deserve like they cared about the families they were working with. You could see it, like, and I can only imagine the emotional toll that takes if that's your job to constantly work with people that are in a bad place. That has to be tough. But anyway,
No, it's
just
good.
throw that out there. We can move along.
Well, that's good. Very good. I'm glad that you gave him a shout out because you know, everybody needs a shot of encouragement once in a while. So, okay, we'll kind of wrap this thing up with this last segment here. Let's talk about something good, even though neither one of our teams are playing in the Super Bowl. I don't think my team's been there, I don't know how long. But what you want to just kind of just talk about the philanthropy of that and what that looks like. And I know you kind of already talked about the, I don't, is she the owner of the Saints?
Yeah, Ms. Gail Benson.
Yeah.
Yep.
So do you want to talk about how just all of the things that come with the Super Bowl and the philanthropy and the positive stuff that's happening too?
Yeah, it's. I hope people know that hosting the Super Bowl is a ton of work for the leadership in the community. It requires tremendous leadership, coordination, collaboration, financial resources to pull it off. Now, everybody knows New Orleans is the greatest city on the planet. Wink, wink. But it's, our folks at New Orleans and Company will say New Orleans is built to host, and the leadership here, the business leadership, and the leadership within our various agencies are all committed to making sure this is the best experience and a safe experience, and people have a ton of fun and may the best team win. And it's a huge economic driver. Like what businesses will do over the course of the next few days is significant to these businesses, big and small. But we often don't talk about is the philanthropic impact that happens in a Super Bowl city. And I'm proud to say that our United Way was selected to be the administrator of Impact 59, powered by Entergy, which is the legacy grant program that NFL deploys in every host community. And so we've worked with the NFL Foundation, the New Orleans Saints, and a host of other corporate partners, thanks to Ms. Benson, to deploy over $3.6 million back in to local nonprofits throughout actually a 10 parish region, in our market. And so, but there's also a significant philanthropic piece to it, and I'm really proud of just the work that we did to get that done, but also the organizations that are going to get critical funding to help them continue their programs.
That's great. Well, I know that's got to be, the Secret Service used to be involved with those. They're called NSSEs, National Special Security Event or something like that. And so at one point in time, the Secret Service was in charge of the security, which I never really thought was a great idea because we're kind of in charge of the leader of the free world. That's enough responsibility. But so I've seen some of that, and the Olympics and some different things I was involved in. Massive amounts of planning, years of planning for some of those things. But kind of wrapping up, would you like to just share, and it's pretty much common knowledge, but just kind of maybe reiterate how people can get involved, or maybe throw out a new idea, something somebody hasn't thought about, like if someone is watching this that wants to get involved, because I think especially, when things happen, especially tragedy, it doesn't have to be tragedy. Sometimes people just want to get involved and be a volunteer, but like especially when tragedy happens, like New Orleans on, January 1st, or Helene or Katrina way back, or whatever, these natural disasters or whatever. How can people get involved? I think sometimes people just get frozen because they're like, well, I want to do something, but I don't have a lot of extra money to donate. How can people get involved to help?
Yeah, so listen, of course I'm going to say, talk to your local United Way. Get to know the people there. Establish that relationship so you can establish the relationship and the trust and the people and the leaders there, so when you feel like you're called to serve, they can be a resource to you. That's certainly one. But more importantly, Scott, I just believe in service in general. If you want to help, you want to do something, then do it. Like, find a way to get involved. Like, it could be through United Way. It could be through another nonprofit in your community. We work a lot with our faith community and churches. So, like, an easy way is to talk to your pastor and say, hey, I want to help out, and how. And many times they're going to be connected to their local United Way and other nonprofit organizations as well. And then we're working with city officials or parish officials around here. But just if if you feel an urge to serve, then do it. And then no act of kindness is too small.
Yeah.
Like, and I know people are always, am I doing enough? Like, and I've been on so many calls with folks who said, well, yeah, I only have $10 to give. I'm like, $10 is a lot of money. Like, because I put your $10 with another $10. Next thing you know, we got $100, and then we got $1,000, and it snowballs. Like, I don't want anybody to ever think that doing a little is not enough, because that's never going to be the case. And so we invite people to consider ways they can serve United Way, obviously, because it's an organization that's near and dear to my heart. But pick your favorite nonprofit, learn about them, get to know the leadership, and find a way to get involved.
That's good. Well, listen, dude, we're wrapping this thing up, and again, I just can't thank you enough for taking that. I used to be a really busy guy. Now I'm not so busy, but I know your hair's still on fire most days, and I just really appreciate.
Let me say this, though, Scott. I'm gonna interrupt you here because a little while ago, you were talking about, and you were saying I don't know if I'm making a difference, and I'm done working, and all that kind of stuff, because you're a super humble guy too. But like, you're doing the next phase of your calling. Like, you got people that are listening to you, and it's a pleasure to be with you on your show. But also know that you're making a difference, because when you're sharing information with people, information is power. You learn something, I learn something, they learn something. That makes for a good day. So. Yeah. Brother, you're doing the Lord's work still.
Oh, well, I appreciate you saying that, Michael. You're put that on my tab. Hey, buddy.
I got you.
Hey, take care. I'll see you soon, buddy.
All right. Thanks, Scott. Take care.
Bye-bye.